Among all the feats and legendary accounts of King David, there is a story that has echoed through the centuries. His iconic confrontation with Goliath, the fearsome Philistine giant. A battle that not only defined the fate of the young shepherd anointed to reign, but also sealed Israel's victory over its enemies. But what if I told you that this story was only half told? What few people know is that Goliath was not the only giant David had to face. In fact, he fought against other colossi, descendants of the same lineage of the Nephilim. Among them, an even more terrifying giant, Goliath's brother, a monstrous creature that almost ended David's life. Why were these details omitted from most accounts? What does this story reveal about the presence of giants in antiquity? There is much more behind this narrative than what we have been taught. If you want to uncover this hidden truth, stay with me in this video. Leave your like, share and subscribe to the channel, because what we are about to reveal here may completely change your perspective on biblical events and the history of humanity. The revenge of Goliath's brother. The story you were never told. Among the many defining moments in David's life, his rise to the throne is undoubtedly one of the most impressive. From humble origins, he was just a young shepherd from the tribe of Judah, the son of Jesse, a direct descendant of the royal lineage. Yet against all odds, he was chosen by God to rule Israel, replacing Saul, whose reign had been compromised by his disobedience and disgrace before the Almighty. But David was not just a shepherd. He was also a talented musician and poet whose compositions were immortalized in the Psalms. Even so, his destiny went far beyond music. He was meant to become the greatest monarch Israel had ever known, a man after God's own heart. His path was marked by challenges, wars, and victories that shaped the history of his nation. And among all the battles he fought, none was as emblematic as his confrontation with Goliath. David, a young man between 15 and 17 years old, with no military training, dared to challenge a warrior feared by all, a Philistine giant who terrorized the armies of Israel. With only a sling and 5 stones, he defeated him, proving that faith and courage can overcome any obstacle. But who really was Goliath? What made him so fearsome? His colossal stature, superhuman strength and combat skills made him an almost invincible opponent. However, his mystery went beyond his brutality. Goliath belonged to an ancient and enigmatic lineage, the Rephaim, a race of giants mentioned in the scriptures and historical accounts. What few people know is that Goliath was not alone. He was just one of many giants that still existed at that time. He had brothers and relatives who shared the same mysterious origin. From the time of Moses, and even in the era of Abraham, the Rephaim were known for their imposing presence and their participation in the wars for the Promised Land. Goliath's defeat was not just a personal victory for David, but a milestone in the conflict between Israel and these legendary beings, forever changing the course of history. The origin of giants, an ancient mystery. The origin of giants has always been an enigma shrouded in mystery and speculation. However, many scholars of the scriptures agree that these colossi emerged after the flood as a result of a forbidden union between fallen angels and human women. These celestial entities, known as the Elohim, descended to earth and took the daughters of men, generating a hybrid lineage of extraordinary beings, giants who spread terror and domination across the earth. The term Rephaim carries a dark connotation in Hebrew and Phoenician, possibly translating to the undead or ancestral spirits. This suggests that these beings were somehow connected to ancient entities that perished in the flood, but mysteriously reappeared afterward. Some ancient accounts indicate that these giants were not just brutal warriors, but also possessed advanced knowledge and supernatural abilities. This reinforces the belief that their origin went beyond simple human ancestry, the revenge of the giants, the forgotten battle. The Bible makes it clear that Goliath was not an isolated case. He was part of a much larger lineage and had brothers who shared the same dark origin. After his death at the hands of David, his brothers swore vengeance against the young king of Israel. In one of the many battles between the Israelites and the Philistines, one of these giants attempted to fulfill this vengeance, putting David in mortal danger, an event that almost cost him his life, if not for the intervention of his loyal warriors. But the giants were not merely mercenaries in the service of the Philistines. Their presence on the battlefield revealed something much deeper. They had strategic alliances with certain peoples of the time, such as the Hittites and the Canaanites, who not only accepted them into their ranks, but also revered them as deities or superior beings. In many ancient cultures, these colossal figures were worshipped and feared, considered demigods or descendants of primordial entities. Thus, the conflicts between Israel and these peoples were not mere territorial disputes. They were spiritual battles between God's chosen people and forces of obscure origin, whose roots traced back to times before the flood. These accounts continue to intrigue scholars and archaeologists who seek evidence of the existence of these giants in ancient history. The scriptures are clear. The giants not only existed, but played a crucial role in the conflicts between kingdoms and the formation of ancient civilizations. Whatever the case, their legacy still resonates today, fueling debates and mysteries about a forgotten era when extraordinary beings walked the earth. Now, I invite you to dive into one of the most impactful episodes of David's journey. A story often ignored, but one that reveals not only the magnitude of his battles, but also the legacy of the giants who continued to threaten Israel. In the book of 2 Samuel 21:15-22, we find the account of a dangerous confrontation with one of Goliath's descendants. In yet another of his many battles against the Philistines, King David, now advanced in age, felt the weight of the years and war upon his shoulders. In the midst of the combat, an imposing warrior named Ishbi-Benob emerged. But he was no ordinary soldier. He belonged to the lineage of the Rephaim, the same as Goliath. Wielding a bronze spear that weighed about 6 kilograms and carrying a newly forged sword, Ishbi-Benob saw his opportunity to avenge his brother's death and eliminate once and for all the king of Israel. David, exhausted and vulnerable, was on the brink of defeat. However, at the most critical moment, Abishai, son of Zeruiah and David's nephew, intervened with a precise strike, bringing down the giant and saving the king's life. Following this event, David's warriors took a solemn oath. They would never again allow him to go into battle, for he was the lamp of Israel, and his loss would be irreparable. However, the threat of giants was far from over. Shortly after, another conflict broke out against the Philistines, where yet another giant was defeated. Then, in a battle at Gob, Elhanan, son of Jare-Oregim, defeated a mighty warrior identified as Goliath the Gittite. But there was still one more challenge. During a fight in Gath, a colossal adversary, who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, challenged Israel. However, he was slain by Jonathan, son of Shimea, David's brother. These 4 giants, descendants of the Rephaim, fell at the hands of David and his mighty warriors, as recorded in 2 Samuel 21:22. The presence of these creatures in biblical history proves that it was not brute strength that determined victory, but rather the faith and courage of those who trusted in God. These events reveal something astonishing. Goliath was not an isolated case within his lineage, and his brothers continued challenging Israel even after his death. The continuous mention of these giants in Scripture suggests that their threat was persistent and that their battles were far more complex than we imagine. Few know the full story of these ancient colossi, and there are still many mysteries to be unraveled about Goliath's 5 brothers, their connection to the Rephaim, and the true significance of this lineage within the biblical narrative. Who were these giants really? Where did they come from? How did they manage to survive for so long? If you want to learn more about each of them and the enigmas surrounding their origin, stay tuned. Soon, I will bring a detailed analysis of this nearly forgotten lineage and their battles with Israel. I am sure you will be amazed. This narrative, almost erased from popular memory, reveals one of the most dramatic moments in David's life. Many know his epic victory over Goliath, the Philistine giant who challenged Israel's army and was struck down by a young shepherd armed only with a sling and 5 smooth stones. But few know that years later, when King David faced another giant, just as imposing as Goliath and determined to avenge his death, his life was in grave danger. His name was Ishbi-Benob, and like Goliath, he was a descendant of the Rephaim, a race of giants whose existence dates back to ancient times and who, somehow, survived the flood. The Philistines, recognizing the colossal strength of these creatures, not only recruited them as mercenaries, but also revered them as deities due to their immense stature and superhuman strength. For Ishbi-Benob, however, this battle was personal. His desire for revenge against David burned like an unquenchable fire. He wanted to exterminate the man who had dared to challenge his race and stain the honor of the giants by defeating Goliath. The confrontation took place amid an intense war between Israel and the Philistines. David, no longer the fearless young man he once was weakened by his long years of combat. The weight of age and the scars of past battles were beginning to take their toll. Tired, the king of Israel found himself in real danger of death. It was then that Ishbi-Benob advanced against him with a terrifying weapon, a gigantic spear with a bronze tip weighing 6 kilograms, capable of piercing any armor with ease. Additionally, he wielded a newly forged sword designed to eliminate any enemy who stood in his way. His towering height, estimated between 2.7 and 3.5 meters, made even the bravest warriors hesitate before him. David fought bravely, but exhaustion made him vulnerable. Just when it seemed that all was lost, Abishai, son of Zeruiah, took action. With a precise attack, he struck the giant before he could deliver the final blow, killing him and saving the king's life. This moment marked a crucial turning point. The soldiers of Israel realized that their king could no longer expose himself to the dangers of the battlefield. In a solemn oath, they declared that they would never again allow David to risk his life, for he was the light of Israel, and his loss would be irreparable. Thus, the story of the giants did not end with Goliath. The descendants of this lineage continued challenging Israel, but the courage and faith of God's people ensured that one by one they were defeated. These often forgotten battles not only reveal the power of these colossi, but also demonstrate the strength of a king who, even in his most fragile moments, inspired his warriors to fight to the very end. This battle was not the last time giants crossed Israel's path. Goliath's brothers continued to emerge, and other descendants of the Rephaim kept challenging the Israelites. However, on that day, one of the last great giants met his fate, signaling that the era of these creatures was coming to an end. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of the battle against Ishbi-Benob, the giant who nearly took David's life. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to the king's aid at the most critical moment, securing Israel's victory. Some accounts suggest that Abishai pursued the giant and, taking advantage of a moment of distraction, drove his sword into his back, ending his life. Regardless, this event marked a decisive turning point in David's journey and in the legacy of the giants in the Bible. If you enjoyed this analysis and want to uncover more hidden secrets in the scriptures, don't forget to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe to the Biblical Secrets 360 channel. Activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming studies. See you in the next video. May God bless you.